So welcome everybody to the Gemini Goddess Evening Star Journey. It's the ascent phase of the Venus Synodic cycle. My name is Sofia Mona Lisa, and I am the founder of the Golden Ray Center, which is an Aquarius age goddess temple for restoring the culture of sovereignty and sacred relationship. I'm also the founder and high priestess of the Rose Wheel Mystery School, which is an Aquarian age mystery school under the umbrella of the Golden Ray Center. Now, if you're following our program, you may be aware that we're about a week late in getting this class up. And that's because last Monday, when we tried to do our class, an hour into it, my Wi-Fi went down. And in the process, it ruined the video of what we had recorded. I was hoping to do a part 1 and part 2. So we're starting from scratch today and just being very aware that that's okay. So what's really spectacular about this first gate root chakra activation is that it's happening at 4 degrees Gemini, 44 minutes. And that 444 is a really spectacular number. Triple numbers seem to be angelic numbers. And the 4 in particular is the number of foundations. So it's very clearly showing us that in terms of our Gemini energies, which is the lower mind, that we have a whole new foundation that we have been able to achieve through the descent journey and through the Inanna underworld journey to begin from with this ascent journey. So that's very exciting for us. We've got a big agenda today because what we're going to be doing is we are going to be doing a recap of some of the key points in the Gemini Goddess Descent Journey and the Gemini Goddess Underworld Journey that have led us to this ascent journey. And in the process of all of this unfolding, we'll see how it's actually rewritten the myth of Inanna that is used as a basis for the Venus Synodic cycle, and how it's actually rewriting our Gemini Goddess Ascent Journey. So that's going to be really exciting to delve into and kind of get this overall picture of what's been happening since the onset of the Gemini Goddess Venus Synodic cycle. So Leela, are you able to do a brief grounding meditation? And if not, that's okay. Just let me know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Starting to notice your breath and drop into your body. Feeling as the breath rises and falls. Each breath in, each inhale, feeling and expanding in the body, presence. And each exhale, a dropping down, a grounding deep into the earth. Feeling our roots, the roots of a tree reaching deep down, down into the heart of Gaia. Our beloved mother, feeling how deeply supported and nourished and held we are. And we can allow ourselves to connect, allowing this support. As we continue to drop deeper, deeper and deeper. Feeling that connection. Roots strong, like the roots of a tree. And as they continue to weave deeper into the core of the earth. Starting to breathe up this nourishment, this vital energy, this love, filling us up through our feet, through our legs, and taking some breaths into our lower belly as we cultivate this life force here. Remembering this deep connection. This presence here in our body temple. Giving thanks for this opportunity to simply be. As you continue to feel that breath within you, expanding out through the layers of our bodies, and coming into presence in this moment here, clear, connected, and present.
Very lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Very refreshing. So we're going to do our spiritual fortification now, and you can set your space. I'm turning on my candle. Looks like that one's a goner. Let me get another one. Okay. So for some reason, Romeo feels guided to join our class. And he's sitting, you can't see him, but he's sitting right here on my mouse pad. So he's decided to add his sacred masculine for a little more support.
Oh, that's so sweet. You know, I've noticed that about cats. They generally, when I'm in a class or something, if the person has a cat, they'll be there. They'll come around.
This is actually the first class that he's joined. So this is really interesting for me to observe. He's very engaged. All right, I've got my spiritual protection spray. We claim this space for the Sophia Christ consciousness. We thank the goddess Diana for putting the full armor of body on us for our spiritual protection and spiritual fortification. We call in our higher selves, our spirit guides and spirit allies, the angels and archangels, and our animal totems and animal medicine. And we seal this space with the light and love of the golden ray. So it is. So Maureen, I'm going to have you do the invocation of Demeter. And just to remind everybody that has been watching us, Demeter is the Greek mother goddess, and her daughter is Persephone. And we've talked about Demeter and Persephone in one of the past classes when we were tapping into the Eleusinian mysteries that are based on the myth of Demeter and Persephone. Now, the Romans also have their own version of Demeter and Persephone, and their names are Ceres and Proserpina. And we're going to talk a little bit further on about why we are doing this specific invocation of Demeter. And she is the mother aspect of Sophia. We'll be talking about what the aspects of Sophia are. And I really love this picture because in this picture, you can see elements of the Magdalene. You can see elements of Inanna with the lapis lazuli necklace. You can see elements of, who was I going to speak to? Oh, Mother Mary as well. So I just really love this image of her. So whenever you're ready, Maureen.
Okay. Invocation of Demeter, mother aspect of Sophia. Daughter to the great titans Kronos and Rhea, earth goddess par excellence, she who brings forth the fruits of the earth and the life-sustaining grains of the land, hear our call, we pray. Great beloved goddess Demeter, mother of Persephone, hear our call, we pray. In your sadness from the loss of your daughter, the world suffered bitter winter and death, finding no relief or joy. Teaching men that all things end, hear our call, we pray. Demeter, goddess of the Eleusinian mysteries, we come before you in honor of all your teachings to man. We come before you to ask that you burn away our impurities as you once sought to do with Demophon. Blessed mysteries of life, death, and life again are yours. Great beloved Demeter, be in our grove, we pray.
Thank you, Maureen. So these are the creative energies of May. We're about halfway through May already. Today is, just checking, May 17th. Oh, I looked at the phone, it said 222. So that's pretty auspicious. So last week was the root chakra activation on May 12th at 5 degrees of Gemini, but we know that that's 444. We round that up to 5 degrees. And let's see what's coming up. We've got the full moon and total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius coming up on May 26th. Maureen and I were actually discussing this the other day and realized that the location of this lunar eclipse is within degrees, a couple of degrees for Maureen and about 3 degrees for me of our natal Venuses in Sagittarius. Have you looked at your chart yet, Leela, to see if this lunar eclipse is activating anything for you specifically?
I haven't. What it's at 5 degrees Sagittarius?
About, it'll be 4 degrees and 44 minutes.
I only have one thing in Sagittarius. So, well, I guess not one thing. One thing in traditional astrology, but not with all the other asteroids.
Okay. And actually, as I said the 444, I realized I was combining the activation of the moon and Venus at the root chakra in Gemini with this lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So it's close to 5 degrees. I know I've written down later exactly where it is, but what's interesting is we see it's on the same axis, that Gemini Sagittarius axis, which means that this full moon total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius is also reactivating that root chakra activation earlier in the month. And we know with full moons that we are getting an illumination of consciousness, perhaps around this new moon in Taurus that activated the Sun, Black Moon, Lilith, and Yeshua conjunction, or very likely this root chakra activation. So that'll be really exciting to see what happens. And also remember with eclipses, they have a window, a 6-month window, 6 months before, 6 months after, that we can have the evidence of what that eclipse is doing for us show up. And what was I going to say? I just lost my total train of thought here. I apologize. Oh, the big things about eclipses is that their energies help us to get back on track on our evolutionary track. So, you know, as we're going along, evolving, expanding, sometimes we might want to go off this side road to see where it leads. Sometimes we might want to go down that rabbit hole to see where it goes. And we can get a little off track. And just like the GPS system says, you know, brings you back to the route, return to the route, return to the route. That's what these eclipses do, is they return us to our evolutionary route. So this is the first eclipse for 2021, and it's the 4th out of the 7 eclipses that are happening on this Gemini Sagittarius axis. And then at the end of the month, we've got Mercury stationing retrograde for its 2nd vision quest of this year. That'll be in Gemini, so that's exciting. So a lot really going on this month. Having problems with my mouse, just letting you know why there's a delay. Okay, so here we see the new moon is in Taurus. It's 5 Sagittarius 25 is where that total lunar eclipse is going to be. So remembering, then we round that down to 5 Sagittarius. And we see here that this is the beginning of that 2nd Mercury retrograde. This month as well, which is on the previous slide, Saturn is going retrograde, and that's taking us all the way into January of 2022. And what's interesting, if I recall correctly, Venus rises as the Capricorn goddess on January 14th. So this vision quest for Saturn, who is the lady, Saturnia is the lady of Capricorn, is completing the day after Capricorn, the Capricorn goddess rises. So that's going to be something that we're really going to want to delve into as we go along. And then this month on May 1st, May Day, just 2 days before Venus ascended out of the Inanna underworld, Uranus completed this particular vision quest, which started back in August. So this is the first Uranus vision quest of this entire Venus synodic cycle. And you'll see down here in August, we begin a 2nd Uranus vision quest ending on the 18th. Just 3 days after the Saturn vision quest ends, just 4, it may be 5 days, but I think it's 4 after the Capricorn goddess rises. So these 2 vision quests are going to be really, really spectacular. And this 2nd vision quest in particular is going to be really spectacular. So we're going to be looking at that a little bit more too as we move forward. So we're going to take a little bit of time to just do our final processing and our final integration of Venus rising as evening star, which happened on May 3rd. And so I've put in some new contemplative questions here, just so that you can kind of be stimulated a little bit around this final closure. So the 2 questions I have are, in what ways have you discovered how your vibrational set point has risen within your body, within you? And in what ways have you discovered how you have control over what you are broadcasting by calibrating your frequency to the frequency of your inner being. So anything that either of you are prompted to share around this, because we know that through that Inanna underworld journey, especially after the Venus Sun conjunction, the resurrection point, we started having all of these experiences of the different aspects of us being resurrected within. And of course, that certainly does affect our vibrational set point. The higher we make we are able to hold our frequency, then of course, the higher our vibrational set point. So is there anything that either of you would like to share around this?
Well, I feel that my vibrational set point is continuously rising with doing the work to hold the new foundations that come into being through, you know, doing initiation work is kind of what is coming through. So yeah, I feel like this last year and doing this work, and also just the transformational cycle that we're currently in the world as a collective, has been huge for me in the sense of really choosing the vibrational frequency that I want to attune to, because I'm just so aware of all of the distortion in the world, and choosing not to get swept up in that, and sometimes yes, and yet to know my own center, to know my own heart, to know my own radiance, and to really anchor in that, I feel has really helped me to continue to stay at a place and not have so much fluctuation that perhaps I would have had in the past. So I'm really noticing that within myself. And yeah, this journey has been, you know, through the underworld up the other side, it's just been very revealing, and I feel more integrated in my shadow than I have before, in just like a loving and accepting way of all the parts of myself. You know, it feels like this reclaiming of my wholeness and my holiness, and that's just this place of alignment. And yeah, just so it's really just this place of choosing the reality that I want to live in. Really.
That's exactly it.
It
The
is.
fact that we can consciously choose and we can consciously calibrate to that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. That was really beautifully said.
Thank you. And I just wanted to reflect that I have at 8 degrees Sagittarius in my natal chart, I have Magdalene. So maybe
Wow.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful. Yeah.
Wow.
So that feels
So
really good.
bringing you
Yeah.
back into a certain relationship with the daughter aspect of Sophia. We'll dive into that in your personal session. I'm really excited. That should be juicy.
I'm really feeling that energy with me so strongly, as like she's like one of my most deep guides at this moment in time. So yay.
That's
Right.
wonderful. Yeah.
Excellent.
Really.
Excellent. How about you, Maureen? How are you doing?
Well, when Inanna was resurrected in the underworld, what I envisioned was Ereshkigal and Inanna standing in front of each other, just standing in front of each other and looking into each other's eyes. And understanding that without one without the other is not a whole being. They are, when united, sovereign. And since both of them seek sovereignty and in different ways, it was a revelation to me that they are seeking the same thing. They just go about it very differently. And so when the rising started, when we began to move up into the evening star phase, they were together because they understood each other as a part of the whole. One without the other could not be what they both wanted to be. So that discovery within me, the same way, eye to eye with my own shadow and the fear that I had regarding the state of the world, I actually took a quantum leap, and it was amazing because the fear is gone. I have no more fear at all. I have no fear of COVID or the vaccination or what some people may or may not want this world to look like. I have none. It is gone. And I feel that was a healing and part of the resurrection. And so, you know, I have, it has been the same since that moment that happened. And so I know it's real. It's not just a moment of wishful thinking. It is a real quantum jump. So I am grateful.
That's huge. That's huge. And I recently shared with both of you a video that Abraham did on the number 19. And the quote from Abraham that I loved is, "There is no greater virus than fear." And so if you at all have any inclination towards the fact that we create our own reality, is it possible that what's happened since January of 2020, we have created for ourselves to reflect back to ourselves, however subtle it may be or however glaring it may be, that frequency of fear in us that must be resolved to allow us to rise higher in our frequency and our vibration to be able to move into our multidimensional selves? Is it possible?
I believe it is. Yes. Yeah.
And so it's really poignant because, just as Leela said, not being swept up in what's been happening on the world stage.
Yes.
From my perspective, the language I would use, because my Mercury's in Aquarius, you know, maintaining this big picture vision of what's happening, which then of course keeps you from getting swept away as well, because you're not in the forest, right? You're not getting lost amongst the trees. This gives you the ability to see that this transition that humanity has gone through over the past, what are we now, almost year and a half, has been a huge transmutational gift to humanity and to the planet.
I believe it's been transformational for sure. We need to cross the divisive barrier as a collective that we have discovered in amongst us. I think in not standing toe to toe, eye to eye with the shadow, we're looking to find that answer in somebody else's wrong thinking. And that needs to turn around. That needs, as a collective, we need to get past that right now. How that happens is by holding. It isn't that we, and I don't believe we have to go out and convince people, because that doesn't work. We just have to hold the higher frequency, and by being in the same room and in the same world with those who are struggling, it helps. It helps bring people up. That part of the high vibration is kind of tricky, because you never think you have the power to affect anybody else's thinking. But by raising your own vibration, it's just automatic. It does help. And so you really don't have to try to convince people that you are right. So I remember Wayne Dyer, one of the things that hit me when I started first studying, looking at his own books and things, he said, relinquish your need to be right. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. Thought, wow, is that ever a weight off my shoulders? You don't need to be right. It's not important. Doesn't mean that you're not important or what you think is not important. It just means you don't have to be right in someone else's eyes. You don't need their approval. You just have to tend to your own inner being. And that should really cause a great lift in your own energy, no matter who you are.
Absolutely. And what that quote from Wayne Dyer really indicates, and what you said about this apparent divisiveness that is really front and center, it's showing that that's a projection of what's within us. Where is the divisiveness in us? If we have to be right, then that means that there is a frequency of divisiveness within us, mm-hmm. because we're not at peace with what is.
That's true. I see that. Yeah, that's good.
So I'm just really excited to see how, they always say that everything is always perfect, mm-hmm. whether you understand and have the clarity about it or not. If you can trust that everything is working out just as it's supposed to be, then this is a way to pivot and see that what we've been through since January 2020 is a manifestation of that. I mean, we even talked about it last year, how we had 5 planets retrograde at the same time, and how that retrograde energy was pulling us within ourselves. Why? Why was it pulling us within? Mm-hmm. So that we could see those shadow pieces. And if you want to boil it down to whatever pockets of fear may still have been resonant that we're ready to let go of, that was the manifestation of it. So it's just really kind of exciting to let go of the struggle. Let go
it is.
Of the struggle.
It feels very, very good to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And on another note, have either of you been able to see Venus in the sky as evening star?
I have. Yes, it was exciting. I finally was able to see her.
Yeah.
And see who there's somebody. I first time I've ever seen Mercury. I saw Mercury on the horizon, just very faintly. I've never seen Mercury before. And I had my little night app out there, trying to look at different stars and things. And I saw Mars right off the tip of the moon. That was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been able to see her finally. Yeah. She's not as bright as she's going to get, but I saw her.
Right. I was really overcome by how comforted I felt by seeing her presence there.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I always love it when I can see her in the evening star phase, even though I'm a morning star personal.
You know, I was just thinking the very same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a morning star person too, and yet seeing her in the night sky like that is just spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do we feel like we've been able to fully integrate then this Venus rising as evening star?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So we're going to start this recap process. And it's to help us build this new storyline that's going to be supporting our ascent journey. And so the first thing is in our first gate activation of the Gemini Goddess Ascent Journey in the personal session, we talked about how Gemini is the air frequency. It has to do with the mind. And so this was giving us a real clue into how this entire journey was going to be about rising above the polarity of the left brain and the right brain hemispheres. And through this rising above the polarities, coming up to this greater point, this higher frequency, that the integration of the left brain and right brain was going to be taking place. And so not only was it helping us to rise above the two hemispheres of the brain, but in effect that in all areas of our life, we're rising above duality, we're rising above polarity, and we are coming up to that higher frequency, which we said is the ability to go into the universal mind and be able to access that cosmic intelligence, or the word that I'm using recently, which I was inspired to use, is leading edge intelligence. And of course, I believe that the reason I was given this leading edge intelligence is because there's so much talk out there about artificial intelligence. And when we're dealing with frequencies, leading edge intelligence always trumps artificial intelligence. We also know that we're dealing primarily with the rainbow goddess aspect of Gemini, although we did discuss the other aspects of Gemini, such as the shapeshifter, the trickster, the storyteller, the creative muse, and there may have been a few other aspects, but we've been really focused on this rainbow goddess. And that right away for me, I was able to identify this rainbow goddess as our chakra system. And as I started looking at this idea of rising above the polarity of the hemispheres of the brain and even integrating the brain, I recognized then that the corpus callosum, which separates the right brain from the left brain, is actually like a rainbow bridge that is allowing this integration to occur so that we can rise above the lower mind into the higher mind, into that unified source field. So this is where it all began. And of course, at that point, we couldn't really see where we were going. So it's interesting to know that as we look back, that this is really a validation that we were sniffing out the right track at that time. So then during the second gate, third eye activation, again, in the personal session, we started diving into this first Uranus vision quest. And that went from August until, as we said, just May 1st, it completed that vision quest. and is birthing a new vision. Well, then birthing the new vision is all about this ascent journey. What is the new story that we're telling about this ascent journey? And in the process, because we see that Uranus is staying within a 5 to 8 degree orb trine of Quaoar in Capricorn, what is it that, as we're birthing this new vision, that we are dancing and singing into our new reality? So that's pretty huge. At the 4th gate, heart chakra activation of the descent journey, we started talking about, which is, the gate of compassion, where we're invited to remove our breastplate. We started talking about the Star of David because we had this aspect in the sky, this air grand trine and this fire grand trine that was forming a Star of David in the sky. And we know now that when we take that aspect here that you can see in this background image of that Star of David, and we take this 2-dimensional image and we look at it from a 3-dimensional perspective, we see here that we have the star tetrahedron. And we're going to talk about this star tetrahedron a little bit more down in our slides. But what is apparent to me now, looking back, that this star tetrahedron, this air grand trine and fire grand trine that created the Star of David, is really foreshadowing the second coming of Christ. And I mentioned earlier, I believe, that at last month's full moon in Scorpio, I had a huge illumination of consciousness around this second coming of Christ, that I believe that this aspect in the sky at the heart chakra was really kind of initiating or foreshadowing for us. And so we're going to be looking more at that as well. And then at the 5th gate activation, this is where we first started looking at these eclipses on the Gemini Sagittarius axis. And these are the 7 eclipses. And I've got here the dates that each of these eclipses are happening on the Gemini Sagittarius axis. I've got whether it's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. I've got the location that it's happening. And this is actually, I'm just going to point out to you, come November, that's going to be the first eclipse on the Taurus Scorpio axis that we'll be dealing with in 2022. And then here are the phases that were going on as we're having these eclipses. Now, in this series of eclipse, this is the one that we're going to have this month, May 26th, that's activating our root gate chakra. You'll see here that this second Uranus vision quest begins August 19th at 14 Taurus, 48 retrograde. And when it begins, we are going to be in the heart activation of this ascent journey. Now, we're starting to see a pattern of themes happening with this heart activation. Up here, we had this Star of David show up in the heart activation on the descent journey. And now what we're seeing is on the ascent journey at the heart activation, Uranus is beginning its second vision quest. Now, what'll happen is it will continue until it stations direct on January 19th. This is 5 days after Venus rises as the Capricorn goddess. And then what happens is it returns to this retrograde point next May 5th, when In the Capricorn Goddess Ascent Journey, it completes in the heart chakra activation. This is really, really huge. And I believe that this is a further validation and a further expansion of what was foreshadowed here, the second coming of Christ. And when we talk about the second coming of Christ, it may become more clear. But if you think about Uranus in Taurus, we're talking about embodied, right? Embodied is a key word for Taurus energies, liberation. Liberation being a key word for Uranus. Well, what could be an embodied liberation, a manifestation of embodied liberation? And that is very much aligned with this idea that we're going to be talking about in terms of the second coming of Christ and how that is happening through us. That second coming of Christ happening through us is what liberates us. And we are embodying that Christ energy. And what we see here, down here at the end of the very last Sagittarius Gemini eclipse, where is it happening? It's happening at our ascension gate. And so this goes back to this idea that we said way back in the first class personal session, that this Gemini goddess, right, the Gemini goddess that is on this Gemini Sagittarius axis, is all about bridging these polarities so that we can reach this higher point, our higher mind in the unified source field. And the very last eclipse on that happening at the ascension gate, to me, completely validates what we saw way back when this journey first began. This ascension gate is in December. This is the last gate before we go into the metamorphic underworld, where the Capricorn goddess gets seated. So these, you can see that these two Uranus vision quests during this synodic cycle have been really, really important for our ability to raise our frequency up into that unified source field and to allow this second coming of Christ to emerge through us as embodied liberation. And for those of you that are familiar with the Sanskrit word, dare I even say moksha, because I believe that's what it is. Is there anything that you two would like to say about anything that we've recapped up to this point?
Not for me.
Anything you'd like to add, Maureen?
No.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
And then at the sixth gate, the sacral chakra gate, we had this huge event on December 21st, the winter solstice, where we had this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius. And if we recall, that particular conjunction was a conjunction that had not happened in like 800 years. Even though we know that every 20 years, Saturn and Jupiter have a conjunction. And what's really interesting to note is in this book, The Most Holy Trinosophia by Robert A. Powell, Powell states that every time Saturn and Jupiter have a conjunction, a new Sophianic impulse is born on the planet. And this ties into what I've was revealed to me at this most recent Scorpio full moon, that this second coming of Christ is all about the emergence of Sophia through us. And we're going to see that in a few slides. This book, The Most Holy Trinity Sophia, is highly recommended to understand what's going to be emerging through us as we go through this ascent journey. And so I highly recommend this book. And then we came to the Inanna Underworld. And here it was in the Inanna Underworld that we first started getting these glimpses of the storyteller aspect of the Gemini goddess, rewriting this Inanna myth. And some of the ways in which we began to rewrite this myth is that we said that instead of Inanna's husband, Dumutzid, going into the underworld and taking Inanna's place as she rises, that this time Osiris, as the sacred masculine, goes into the underworld. Now, what's interesting is in this book, The Most Holy Trinity Sophia, they talk about how in Egypt, Isis was considered to be a manifestation of Sophia. And we also understand this concept of hieros gamos, sacred marriage, sacred union. And while they don't say it in the book, it's clear to me, it's implicitly clear to me that if Isis was seen as Sophia, then her beloved, her sacred partner, Osiris, must have been seen as the Christ. And we know that because they referred to Osiris as the wise and compassionate leader, that nomenclature, even of itself, also refers to these Christ consciousness energies being associated with Osiris. The reason this is important is because we know when Jesus, who was on the planet 200 years ago, Yeshua, was the embodiment of the Christ. And at this mystery of Golgotha, which we're going to talk about, he descends into hell. Osiris goes into the underworld. There is a direct connection between his Yeshua as the embodiment of Christ, his first descent into hell, and now Osiris as an embodiment Christ, making a second trip into hell or the underworld. And we're going to see that connection. The next piece of the story that we rewrote is that the split between the sisters, Inanna and Ereshkigal, is being healed so that they can ascend together. Well, it just so happens that this Inanna and Ereshkigal healing ties into this very insightful quote that I'm going to read in a minute from the Most Holy Trinity Sophia. And so what we see about this split between the sisters, Inanna and Ereshkigal, that occurred, that this is actually in the myth a representation of separation consciousness. And by them being, the split being healed, and them being able to rise from the underworld unified, that this is now leading us into unity consciousness. This goes back to what we've said about this whole Venus Synodic cycle with the Gemini goddess being about rising above polarities, having that integration so that we can access that point in the unified source field. So what we find out from Robert Powell in the Most Holy Trinity Sophia, as the split took place at the fall. So what was the fall? Well, we're going to hear about that right here. And this is the split, the relationship between humankind and Mother Nature was disturbed at the time of the fall. Not only were human beings cast out of paradise, but nature also fell. The mother descended into the darkness of the underworld, and the sub-earthly spheres comprising hell were inserted between humankind and the mother. The direct connection between the father and the mother was also cut off. However, a new connection was established at the time of the mystery of Golgotha through Christ's descent into hell. The deeper significance of the descent into hell has remained veiled up until now, and attention has been focused instead upon the ascension, the ascent to the Father. Now, in our time, the descent into hell, or rather the descent through hell down to the mother, is of key significance for an understanding of the second coming. With the descent into hell at the mystery of Golgotha, Christ reestablished contact with the mother, implanting a seed within the womb of the earth for the redemption of the mother. With the second coming, this seed is unfolding, and a new descent into hell is taking place. And so what I offer is that the seed that was planted into the womb of earth by the Christ was the seed of Sophia Consciousness. And that with the second coming, this seed is unfolding. To me, this translates as that the Sophia Consciousness is unfolding or emerging through each of us, and that is what the second coming of Christ is all about. Because what we know is that the Christ and Sophia are joined in sacred union. And so when you talk about one, you are implicitly talking about the other. So when you're saying the second coming of Christ, you are also saying the second coming involves the Sophia because of their sacred union. And Robert Powell further states, what is now taking place through the second coming, at the first coming, Christ opened up to the Father. Now with the second coming, he is revealing the path to the mother. And what we know is that the father and mother, as polar energies of each other, are and only one aspect of the Christ and Sophia consciousnesses are the aspects that are most likely, that are most often pointed to in reference to the Christ consciousness and the Sophia consciousness. So that there's a lot here that we are rewriting about this myth of Inanna that was being downloaded to us without our conscious awareness that what we were being given was more pieces to the puzzle that were pointing us to this emergence of the Sophia through us as a part of this Venus ascent journey. Is there anything that either of you would like to speak to around any of that? And the last piece I want to just mention here, because I think I skipped over by mistake, is that this split that took place at the fall is what's being referred to in this myth of the Demeter Persephone, where Hades comes out of the underworld, steals the daughter aspect of Sophia, Persephone, and takes her into into hell to be the queen of hell, of the underworld with him. And so you can see as you dive into that myth more deeply how it is actually talking about this same event. And so now we are rewriting the Gemini Goddess Ascent Journey. In the past, when you went through the Ascent Journey, you were bringing demons up with you from the underworld. That is no longer necessary because the split has been healed, because the Christ went down into the underworld to enable this emergence of the Sophia from the underworld to emerge through us in our ascent journey. And so what we're going to be doing is, as we go through each gate, the focus is going to be shifted to our resurrected aspects at each gate within each chakra. And this was even kind of foretold to me through the message that I received from Yeshua after the resurrection point happened in the Inanna underworld. And he said to me that the Yeshua within us is being resurrected in a way that enables us to stand in or hold the frequency of our inner Christ consciousness and to be able to see ourselves in our wholeness. What is that wholeness? It's that sacred union of Christ and Sophia that we are. That's our wholeness. And so we're going to see how our inner being is the star tetrahedron of our Sophia Christ consciousness on another slide. The other thing that we're rewriting is that when Venus goes into these phases that we've been identifying as underworld journeys, like the Inanna underworld journey, the metamorphic underworld journey, that we're shifting that because we're coming out of the underworld and instead we're going to be having inner world journeys. Remember the mysteries, as above, so below, as within, so without. So this is the shift that's going to be taking place. So by the time we get to the metamorphic journey, it's going to be a metamorphic inner world journey. What metamorphosis is happening within us during that journey? And so now, because we have got this whole new foundation from which to rise of our root chakra, symbolized by that 444 for this activation, knowing that through this ascent journey, we're reaching more and more and more into our multidimensional selves, because we're raising the frequency at each gate, which is a portal to our multidimensional self. We are going to have to find a new center of balance at each gate activation as we ascend through these chakras and expand into our multidimensional selves. And through this process, Sophia is going to be emerging through us as the second coming of Christ. Now, I've referred to the guided meditations that I began to offer 2 months ago. The first one is free to everybody. It's the guided meditation for enhanced well-being. And the one that I did last month is the guided meditation for enhanced connection with your divine self. So I was guided to two things. One, that as we're going through this ascent journey, each guided meditation will be done to help us to establish that new center of balance that I referred to at each of the chakras. And two, that this program, which is set up as a subscription program, $27 a month, is going to be included free to those people that are taking the Sacred Feminine class. So on the resource page for the Ascent Journey, Maureen and Leela, I will have a link to the page that has these guided meditations and their slides for you to download. And the password will be with that link so that you can use those meditations to assist you with this expansion into our multidimensional selves.
Thank you.
Sure. Is there anything that either of you would like to say about how we, as the embodiment of the storyteller aspect of the Gemini goddess, have rewritten and are rewriting this myth?
Yeah, well, there's so much here. From the slide before when you were speaking about the split in the fall, just like reading how that was described is so much through my own lens of what I have been feeling and why I'm here. Because I often express that one of my, my views of what, like, one of the biggest disconnections and kind of splits in our humanity is our disconnection from nature. And just like reconnecting back with the cycles and of the planets, of the earth, of the seasons, of this connection of being back into the earth. There's like this ancient remembrance of, no time is past, present, and future all come into one, but it's this kind of coming back into this spiral that reminds us of like that everything is available to us. And it's just so powerful to see it coming through in all these different lenses to remind me of, that alignment for me, that is what I'm here for. And this second coming of Sophia, of the Christ consciousness, I've been feeling that so strongly. And just, and I spoke with Sofia Mona Lisa in my personal session, just that feeling of how beautiful it is that it's this availability for all of us to be able to embody that and to spread that at this time. And that gives me so much hope. It's just to be able to just like, oh, that's enough to just be that. And so it's really beautiful. It's like this reminder of there's like reconnecting to the truth of who we truly are, which is this sacred union, this dance within us. And this journey with the Gemini goddess for me is so much about alchemy. It's like the alchemizing of all of our chakras, of all of the parts of ourselves. And it just really feels like there's something new, that we're stepping into something so new at this time, that it's new to us, but it's not new in a sense. It's just like we're stepping more into who we truly are as these beings of light that have chosen to be here for this shifting and this change on this planet, and to midwife this second coming of the Christ Sophia light.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am so blessed and honored for you to be sharing this journey with us for many reasons. One being that your cosmic messenger, Mercury, is in Gemini. And so I am in full expectation that as we go through this ascent journey, the cosmic messenger within you will be sharing messages from the Sophia Christ consciousness with us. And I really want to refer you back to this book again, Leela. This book, The Most Holy Sophia, The Most Holy Trin of Sophia, is very, very powerful.
I think I'm going to order it today.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, Robert Powell's contribution is phenomenal. And having said that, it's clear, as much as he's presenting the divine feminine, and he's talking about the three aspects of the divine feminine, that either there's a disconnect about the entirety of the divine feminine energies that to me doesn't come across in the pages. So I had to bridge that with my own connection to the divine feminine, or perhaps giving him the benefit of the doubt, he perhaps maybe didn't feel was the time to share that piece of the divine feminine when he wrote this book. So I would just offer that as you read it, it may feel like pieces are being left out that you're being guided to fill in, because that's what happened to me.
I find that with a lot of things I read about these kind of topics, and that's okay. And I say this with love and respect, that I find a lot of books written by masculine embodied people about the divine feminine, there is a piece that's missing. Yes. And I don't know if it's maybe just like their own interpretation and not, you know, having something through being in a feminine body. And not that we can't all, you know, connect with the divine feminine. That's not just what it is. But there is something that we're, as all beings, are dropping deeper into what that is within us. And that for us in these feminine bodies, it's easier to access that because we have a direct connection.
Yes, I would agree with that. And so maybe the way that I might choose to say that is that there's a lens that they're looking through that's different than our lens. Yep. And so maybe they can't see all the pieces. I'm not really sure. It would be really delicious to have that conversation with a man that is really connected with the divine feminine, to try to come to some understanding of what that dynamic is that we both clearly have picked up on.
Totally. I would love that too.
Yeah. So thank you for all of that sharing. That was really spectacular.
Yes, thank you.
For the greater good of our multidimensional selves, you know?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And for me, this just ties back again to the trip to France that Maureen and I took, because where we ended our trip was in Sainte Marie de la Mer. And we know from the legends, the stories, that Sainte Marie de la Mer is where Mary Magdalene arrived on the shores of France with her daughter, Sarah, the daughter of Yeshua, and with her sisters or sister. This is something to dive into later regarding Maria Salome and Maria Jacobe. When I do research on it, what I'm finding that's what's being said about Maria Salome is what's being said about Maria Jacobe. And so I'm wondering if those two identities are like two sides of the same coin. But we can dive into that deeper at another time. Maureen, was there anything you wanted to say about our storyteller aspect of the Gemini Goddess rewriting this myth?
No. I completely feel aligned with that. One of the things that occurred to me just as you were talking was, you know, after the Golgotha experience and the I don't know, it wasn't exactly a resurrection, but it was a resurrection in a way of the body to go on with what its mission was, that their missions at this point split, that he went one way and she went another. And I mean, nobody knows, obviously. I'm just feeling into this. And some people feel that maybe he was with her when they landed in France, but mostly I'm not feeling that. He went a different direction and she did, which makes the second coming even more poignant for me, because at that point, what they had done as a couple was finished within that lifetime, and they went on with their own missions. And then the second coming is the reunification. That's kind of what I'm feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So let me just quickly dive into the Holy Trinities and how all of this comes together. And this ties back to that aspect that we saw in the sky, the Star of David aspect at the fourth heart chakra when we were on the descent journey. So we have the upward facing triangle that represents the sacred masculine principle. And we know that in totality that this sacred masculine principle is Christ consciousness, or the frequency of love. And I would even say that this love frequency is the frequency of divine will. And so the three aspects of the Christ consciousness are the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Most anybody who's a Christian, and perhaps a lot of people that aren't Christians, are very familiar with this Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But this is only one half of the picture. And they call this Trinity God. It's only one half of the picture. Because if you're going to call this sacred masculine principle God as Christ consciousness, then when we look at the downward facing triangle that represents the sacred feminine principle, then we have the counterpart of God, which is Goddess, and we have the counterpart of Christ, which is Sophia Consciousness. And we know that her frequency is the frequency of wisdom. So the aspects of Sophia are then mother, daughter, holy soul. And when the two merge, come into sacred union, this is what we have. We have what we identify as the Star of David, which actually represents source, the unified source field. And so we see that Father is mirrored by mother, Son is mirrored by daughter, Holy Spirit is mirrored by Holy Soul. That's the Sophia Christ consciousness right here in its sacred union as the unified source field. And so if we look a little deeper into this, what we discover in this 2D depiction of the Sophia Christ consciousness, which I mentioned back when we were looking at this aspect at the fourth gate activation in the descent journey, when we shift our perspective from 2D to 3D, this is the Sophia Christ consciousness. In 3D, we see here that this is the star tetrahedron, what a lot of people refer to as the Merkaba. And it is this star tetrahedron that is the basis for the flower of life. And so what this tells us is that the star tetrahedron is a fractal of this flower of life. This flower of life, which again represents the unified source field, which represents unity consciousness, which is a hologram of which we are a fractal of. And so if you understand your soul or your inner being to be an extension of the unified source field, what that means is we go back to here, we see that our soul is in fact the Sophia Christ consciousness. We have been carrying this consciousness within us through eternity, and our relationship with the truth of who we are, made in the image of that God, Goddess, unified source field, the power of the Sophia Christ consciousness that we carry within us, that relationship has been torn asunder through patriarchy, because they did not want humanity to be empowered, to know how powerful they are. And so what they did is that they really usurped the divine will. And what we're going to see is that we all know, let's not tiptoe around it, that there is an army of beings that are working against the forces of light. And they did previously attempt to thwart the divine will, to thwart Christ, by unleashing this perverted masculine energy of patriarchy onto the planet. And they sold this bill of goods to humanity that was masculine energy. And when humanity bought that bill of goods, they completely forgot about the purity of sacred masculine energy. And now what they're going to do, and what they are doing, is they are going to attempt to thwart the divine wisdom, Sophia. And so star seeds, light workers like us, that are collaborating with the sacred feminine energy are under attack by these beings, because these beings are desiring to utilize the sacred feminine energy to rebuild their dark structures. This is why months ago, as we began this work with the Venus Synodic cycle, which is a representation of the sacred feminine energy, I was guided to start including the piece about putting on the spiritual protection. And then I was guided to take it up a notch and say spiritual fortification. And so it is imperative that everybody that is connected to this work does a conscious spiritual protection process. And I would say 3 times a day, to stay safe from these beings that are attempting to siphon this divine feminine energy from us. I can't make you do it. And you might feel like this is a good idea in theory, and maybe do it sometimes and maybe not do it other times. I am asking everybody watching this to make a commitment. If you are committed to the second coming of Christ and the re-emergence of the Sophia, you cannot do your work unless you spiritually protect and fortify yourself. Now, let me show how we are already beginning to see this, the the manifestation of how this thwarting of the divine wisdom is showing up. And so I cannot play this video on the YouTube. So I'm going to pause the recording, and I'm going to show it to you two, and then we'll have a discussion about it. So let me. Okay. So what is your reaction to this, Sophia?
As soon as they launched that and I heard the name, it was like the terrorist group being called ISIS. It's like just another way to kind of thwart the feminine, divine feminine is what it felt like to me. Like as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, of course his name's Sophia.
Exactly. Hold on
exactly.
a second.
Yes.
Oh my God.
That is sick.
Just even her facial expressions. And like,
it's kind of scary, isn't it?
I want to be your friend. I'm just like, oh my God.
No. I don't think so. And
I'll choose humans, thanks.
Yes. And you notice how they all look?
Yeah.
They're beautiful in the cultural sense of beauty. I don't, except for that one guy back there, that Einstein looking one. I had no idea this was almost ready for public. Holy cow.
Yes, and the caption underneath this video says that this company plans to mass produce an army.
I heard that word. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, and being around, yeah, I like how you included that, but that was a piece that stood out for me was being around others is dangerous these days. I'm just like, what the? Like,
right. And what about the robot they created to detect people that aren't wearing masks?
I know.
The thing that was most, what is the word that I want to use here?
Alarming?
Diabolical. The most diabolical was when they said that these machines will help people by touching their hearts and inspiring their hearts. Are you kidding me?
Mm-mm. There's no way.
Well, and yeah, like, why do we need that to happen from a robot when we can get that from each other?
Because they want us all to be isolated.
And probably these robots are all connected to one single thing where all of the information that they're gathering can be stored even more so than our phones are doing now. I mean, that is just, you know, I saw on YouTube a long time ago, a dog, it was last year, but there was a dog that was in the park, a robot dog that could spot people who weren't wearing masks. That was its job. And people were watching it and laughing kind of, but I thought, could that be real? And now it's people. And I've been hearing about this kind of replacement too, and I just thought can't happen, but seems like it can.
Well, and what we've seen is when humanity becomes complacent about these egregious strides forward, we lose our power.
Mm-hmm.
We give our power away.
Mm-hmm.
And people like us that are here to collaborate with the Sophia Christ consciousness, we must be aware of what's going on while simultaneously keeping our frequency very, very high so that we do not give our power away. And in the slides and in the teaching part of my free guided meditation on enhanced wellness, what I do is I take you into your multidimensional self so that you can download your own leading edge consciousness. Because if you're at the frequency where you can tap into your leading edge intelligence, the frequency of that leading edge intelligence, as I said, it trumps artificial intelligence, whether it's been put into your body through some type of an injection, whether it's been put into your body from the chemtrails or through genetically modified foods. When you keep your frequency high and you are in constant contact with your leading edge intelligence, this artificial intelligence cannot manipulate you. So these are the things that we have to be aware of. And thank you for mentioning the whole ISIS thing, because you're right. That was probably the first global attempt to thwart the divine wisdom and to usurp the sacred feminine energy that I became aware of as well. And now we're seeing this with this robot called Sophia. And remember what I told you that the Most Holy Trinity Sophia book said? That in Egypt, Isis was known as Sophia. So they have been going after the Sophia consciousness. They are going after the Sophia consciousness.
Well, yeah,
and so
they've
this
been
is why
hiding
it's
it.
imperative. But those with eyes to see and ears to hear know. And we have a spiritual obligation to reveal. And that's what we're doing here. And this is why it's important to use whatever spiritual fortification method you're most comfortable with and keep yourself spiritually fortified when you're doing this kind of work with the sacred feminine and sacred masculine energies. So let's look at the activation aspects for this first gate activation that took place last week on the 12th. The big thing that points that sticks out here is we've got the North Node and the Cosmic Messenger conjunct this activation. So remember, the North Node is always showing you your evolutionary path, what it is that you are evolving towards. And the Cosmic Messenger is going to be giving us messages about what that path is. The next big one is Chiron, the cosmic healer, the shamanic healer, cosmic shaman, being squared Mars, the sacred masculine. Then we've got Jupiter, the cosmic guru, squaring Demeter and Sedna. And then we've got Neptune being sextile to the sun, Black Moon Lilith, Yeshua conjunction. And remember what I said, that at that new moon that happened earlier in the month, it's activating this sun, Black Moon Lilith, and Yeshua conjunction. So this is what they look like on the chart. We see here that new moon, the day before this activation, activating that sun, Black Moon Lilith, and Yeshua. So we'll look really heavily into that. And then remember I said on the 26th, when we have the full moon here, it's going to be standing in opposition to this gate. And what's interesting is that the piece that it most closely activates is this same, is the moon, Venus, piece of this conjunction. It's right across the sky from there. So we will dig into all of that in our personal sessions. We've got an inconjunct here between the sacred masculine and Cancer, and Saturnia and Aquarius. And what's becoming really obvious to me that this Saturn in Aquarius is really about this emergence of the Sophia. We know that Saturn is the cosmic gatekeeper. Anything in the intangible world has to pass through her in order to be made tangible on this world. And so with these multi-dimensional selves represented by Aquarius, this is showing me that this Saturn piece, especially because we had Saturn and Jupiter here at the winter solstice, which is that new Sophianic impulse, that this is about the Sophia emerging through us as Saturn travels through Aquarius. So what's fascinating is, remember what we said about an inconjunct. We said an inconjunct typically takes energies that have this either or impulse. I can be this or I can be that. And what it's doing is it's raising the frequency for you to understand that you can be both. And so here we've got it in conjunct the sacred masculine in Cancer, right? The beloved father. You could even say the father aspect of the Christ Trinity. I can either be an embodiment of the Christ energies or the Sophia energies. But we know, in fact, that we are an embodiment of both because of their sacred union. So this is the consciousness that has been kind of stuck in the collective consciousness of humanity, particularly with those that are aligned to the Christian traditions that have this false premise that God is masculine, that it's not masculine and feminine. And so if I start looking at the feminine, well, then I've somehow thrown away the masculine. And that's not true. You're not either or. You're not embodying either or. We are an embodiment of both. And we are made in the image of their sacred union. So this is the shamanic medicine that's being offered to us as we work with these energies to discover what is going to be this new center of balance within our root chakra as we've raised the frequency of our root chakra and as we move into our multi-dimensional self through our root chakra. We've got the shamanic medicine of Aries, self-love, and personal identity. This is really important because as we move through each of these chakras and our frequency is getting higher and higher, our personal identity in terms of how we know ourselves and who we know ourselves to be is going to be completely transformed every step of the way. We've got the Taurus medicine, this medicine of full embodiment. As we're going through this journey, more and more fully embodying the Sophia consciousness that we are. The Gemini medicine of trusting intuition and inner guidance. As we find this new center of balance within each of these chakras that are at a higher frequency, we're going to be receiving more and more guidance from our Sophia Christ consciousness. And so being able to trust what we are receiving from our inner Christos Sophia as we're going through this ascension process. And then Aquarius, owning ourselves as a visionary and expressing it in the world with good boundaries. We have to own the knowing the truth that Sophia is emerging through us. And how is it that we are allowing her to express in the world through us? So all of this medicine is here to help us at the root chakra. This is the big themes that are happening over the course of this year. The 3 Saturn, Aquarius, square Uranus. We won't have the next one until June, but we are having a Saturn retrograde, Saturn Vision Quest initiated this month. So that'll be really important. And then these are the Vision Quest opportunities. So utilizing the shamanic medicine energies to discern which are contributing to your new center of balance in the root chakra. So for instance, what I mean about that is if you look at this activation, you've got the North Node, you've got the Mercury. It is in trine to Saturn and Aquarius. It is semi-sextile here to Uranus and Taurus. So, and it is sextile here to Chiron and Aries. So which of these, oh, and Osiris and Chiron and Aries. So what you would want to look at is as you're trying to find this new center of balance, because these energies are in aspect to this activation, which of the energies in this conjunction or any of its aspects are really helping you, facilitating your ability to find that new center of balance. Utilizing the astrological keywords, discern how the new moon activation of the Sun, Black Moon, Lilith, Yeshua conjunction planted a new seed of consciousness within you. And utilizing the astrological keywords, discern how the full moon, total lunar eclipse activation of the Venus moon root chakra activation can enable you to get back on track with your inner Christos Sophia's evolution and the emergence of Sophia through you. So those are some new kinds of ways of working with these energies as vision quests that we haven't dived into before. So I'm hoping that you'll find them to be really expansive and offering you a lot of clarity around this emergence process for you personally. And our next support group is actually, I didn't fix this slide. I apologize. It's not on the 22nd. It's on the 20, or is it on the 22nd? Hold on. Let me get up my calendar because we pushed everything forward a week. Yeah, it's the 29th. The 22nd. Oh, I didn't fix this slide either. Sorry about. Oh no, those are June. Okay. So the 29th is this month's support group. And then these are the June classes for the second gate activation and the Fierce Protectors 7th labor. Okay. Any final questions, answers, ahas, anything desiring to be heard, anything desiring to be witnessed? Okay.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. It's always a lot. I know it's a lot. And actually, I'm pretty proud of myself because it's only 4:01. So I did that, got it all in somehow.
And when I say a lot, not in a I mean, I love a lot. My Mercury and Gemini loves, and just all the information. It's always just like, there's a lot of assimilation and integration, and yeah, I feel really in alignment. I'm grateful. This class just really gave me this kind of, this realignment into my path this reminder. And I love the root chakra. I'm like really deeply connected to the Divine Mother and just feel her so deeply within me. And so it's just this place to just like reestablish my foundation, reestablish my structure and my stability, and, you know, connecting in with my home and my sacred work and all of the kind of tangible things and the resources and my connection to the earth. And it's such a beautiful place. Like I have a much more of a comfort level working from the ground up than working from this way down. Like, you know, that's just a different lens. So this feels
Yeah.
really good. Yeah. And
Good.
reclaiming. The energy that just keeps on coming for me is like reclaiming.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I don't know if I ever told you this, Leela. I think I've mentioned it to Maureen. From the time I was like 2 or 3, I knew I was here for a mission, and I knew that I was going to find a partner that was going to be instrumental in this mission. And I've been waiting my whole life for it to be revealed to me. And it was finally revealed to me that the partner that I would be working with is my higher self. And it's clear to me that this work about the emergence of the Sophia is what the mission is. I mean, it felt huge to me as a little child. I didn't know how in the world I was going to be able to do it, but the urgency and the imperativeness around the mission was so deeply impressed upon me. I was just ready. Okay, when? And it's taken, you know, I'm 58 now. It's taken this long for it to unfold, but I'm very clear now. There's no more question, no more waiting, no more asking for it to be revealed.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
All right, beloveds, I will get this up onto the new Ascent Journey resource page as quickly as I can. And I'm excited about where this Ascent Journey is going to take us.
Me too.
Oh, me too, for sure. Yes.
Okay. Well, Leela,
Alrighty.
I'll see you in the group session, and Maureen, I'll see you in the Sacred Masculine class.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.